Okay, please start the webinar.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Dr. Arsalaan Qayum from Institute of Business Management, College of Business Management, CBM, Karachi. And we are hosting the conference of 4th International Islamic Conference on Islamic Banking and Finance 2020. And the main theme of this conference is impact of COVID-19 outbreak on micro, small, and medium enterprises and way forward for Islamic financial institutions. So I'm really thankful to the guest speakers who are here. Um, so before delaying anything, because we have a very short time and we have very valuable speakers uh, right now. So uh, I would like to introduce first. Uh, First, I would like to introduce Mr. Dawood Ashraf, who is the Senior Economist, Islamic Research and Training Institute. And he's a Senior Researcher at Islamic Research and Training Institute, IRTI of Islamic Development Bank Group. He has combined banking and academic experience of more than 20 years. Dr. Ashraf holds a PhD in Banking and Finance from the University Wales in the UK and Master from Economics in International Business and Economy from Kyushu University, Japan. He is also a charter holder and member of the CFA Institute. Dr. Ashraf's research interests are in portfolio management, banking, corporate finance, Islamic capital markets, and Islamic banking, with a special focus on the interaction of incentive structure and risk-taking behavior of financial institutions. Dr. Ashraf's research is published in several international journals, and he has presented his research work at various international conferences. Now, I would like to put my mic towards Dr. Ashraf. So, please, Dr. Ashraf, this is your time, and please, we have given you the time is very short. So, in 15 minutes, please try to speak something about the impact of COVID-19 outbreak on MSME.
نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. IoBM. It's my fourth time joining IoBM for a conference, and every time it's a new thing. Last year, it was the Dr. Kabeer Hasan would recall that we had seen this dharna of Khadim Hussain. So it was an amazing thing. And this year we are having this in COVID. So I'm not sure what is the problem, but there is something with IoBM that every year we have a new style of conference. So for me, it's a good experience. Always, it's good to see people. Arsalaan, my understanding is that I will be talking about 45 minutes. So how you cut it, I have no idea, but let's see how I can do in 15 minutes. So I'll do my best.
Thank you. Thank you.
But most probably I will not be able to honor the timing that you have asked me. So let me see if I could share my screen with you, and then we can start with that. Okay. Host disabled. So can you please enable screening from me, please?
Yes, sir, please. Just a minute.
Can I share now?
Just a minute, sir. I'm doing so. I request Mr. Kabeer to please allow the guests to share.
Yes, you have to allow me to share the screen as well, because I'll be showing slides.
Yes, sir. Just a minute, please. So. So please try it, and I think the hosts have allowed for sharing the screen. Dawood Ashraf sir, please try to share the screen. See if it's working. Yes, sir. Now I can see.
Mhm. Can you see it now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's clear.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Arsalaan, for the time. I can understand that IoBM is running out of time for the sessions. So many great speakers are waiting to talk. So I'll try to manage my time as much as I can, but the topic is so intense that it would be a little challenging to put everything within the allocated time. See, this topic is very important. This pandemic has hit us in such a way that we were not prepared. Nobody was prepared. And especially the sector that we're talking about, they are not prepared for any crisis. And this is something that they were not completely prepared at all. And it hit them hard. So what happened with the COVID-19 pandemic, basically, first came the virus. There was an announcement of global pandemic. And with the virus comes the health crisis. Everybody was trying to protect the healthcare system, resulting in lockdown and social distancing. So what this lockdown has done, it helped the curve to flatten a little bit for the virus, but it has killed all the small, medium businesses. Any mom and pop store closed, not being able to make payment of their bills, not being able to make payment of their debt, not being able to meet their other requirements. So that the health crisis has led to the economic crisis. And I think that is the more important part that we need to understand in today's presentations. So when we talk about SME, we usually think that SMEs are kind of small businesses. They do not have a lot of weight in the economy. But if I look at the SMEs, if I look at the number of firms globally, 80 to 90% of global firms are SMEs. And these 80 to 90% from global firms employ 60 to 70% of global population. So these are the main employer of the global economy. So if they are going out of business, that's a big trouble. So what has happened to these guys, basically, when the COVID came, as I mentioned to you, so the first thing that happened to them was they got short of liquidity. So there's no revenue, the shop is closed, no revenue is coming, all the bills are there. You want to keep yourself alive, and then you run out your liquidity. Now, there's no revenue, that means you are not making any money from the business. So your sustainability at the risk as well. So no liquidity, no sustainability. You want to stay afloat, you will go and borrow money from a financial institutions or from the government. And given the situation that it was really bad situation, so all the governments globally responded to pandemic and came out to support this sector. So this involved debt moratorias, where the SMEs are allowed not to pay their debt for the 6 months or so. There were new small business loans for the SMEs to keep their employees on their payroll. They got some support for payment of salaries for their employees. Some companies has got some working capital loans, and there was some support from new small business for rent payment. And if you read all these items, so one common factor in all these items is all of these are loans. There is no support is available. And as I mentioned to you, these MSMEs are facing crisis because they don't have the liquidity. They are at the verge of bankruptcy. And now they're taking more and more loans to survive. So what's going to happen with that? So it's now we're sitting at something which is kind of an close to erupting volcano. And this close to erupting volcano is the debt for all these MSMEs. So given this situation, the MSMEs are basically facing double pandemic. So one is
इसमें तो बस एक folder, एक वो abstract book और एक notepad, pen or pencil, nothing else. तो gifts आते हैं back
I request Mr. KB sir to please mute all other participants, please. Thank you.
Okay, so what happened is with the MSMEs, they're facing the dual pandemic. The one pandemic is the coronavirus, but the second pandemic is their economic pandemic. So what happened is most of these MSMEs are close to bankruptcy risk. They're waiting for the government support for the second time, which is quite uncertain at this time. Second wave is already underway. The debt levels are rising because of the first wave of the coronavirus, and now they have started to make payment for the moratoria that they have received earlier. And unfortunately, because of the second wave of the coronavirus, lockdowns are coming back into the action. So again, whatever they have recovered a little bit in the past few months after the first lockdown, most probably they will go down very quickly. I was reading a news this morning that in France, small shopkeepers are protesting against the government against the lockdown, because they are viewing this as that the government of France is trying to build big giant tech companies at the cost of these small stores. So imagine that Amazon is not employing 70 to 80% of the global workforce. These SMEs are employing that one. And now if Amazon is taking away all the business from these small businesses, there's going to be huge backlash, which is another thing that maybe for some other time we can talk about, the political backlash of these lockdowns. But let me move on with the MSMEs. So given the situation, that how we can help these MSMEs, what can be done? So right now, the solution is lend them more and more money. Well, should we give them more debt? So would more debt be helpful for them to survive? Most probably not. Why? Because microfinance movement, which is the main movement against, which we believe is a golden pill to resolve all the MSMEs issues, it did not help. The empirical evidence shows that it did not help MSMEs in good times. So I'm not sure how it's going to help in the bad time where we are right now. So then we have to look beyond the microfinance movement. And then I suggest that as Islamic finance provide us a good background solution for this kind of situation. So Islamic finance framework basically has two major elements to it. One is the Islamic social finance, and the other one is Islamic commercial finance. So I put this framework as the two-pronged framework. So you have to have the social finance element on one hand and commercial finance element on the other hand. So how this approach is going to work? So this approach basically is an approach, it's a segregated, it's a staggered approach. So a staggered approach means that there would be not all the entrepreneurs, not all the SMEs are at the same stage of development at any given point of time. So some are just opening the business, the others have started a little bit earning revenue, the others are maybe a little bit improved further, and the others, maybe another group is fully functioning as a business. So for each group, at whatever stage of the development an entrepreneur is, we have to provide a different set of support mechanism. So say, for example, if there is a business which is in a very bad shape, just starting now. So for those kind of businesses, very poor people, if you give them loan, there is no chance that you would be able to get back that loan. If you give them loan at very high interest rate, because these are the most riskiest borrowers, so then most probably you will not get anything back, and then this person is defaulter for the rest of his life. So the Islamic finance mechanism would provide grant to begin with. So this grant is one-time liquidity shock. This will help this person to build the capital. I have looked into the literature and try to see whether this has any impact on capital buildup for the small medium enterprises. And the results for the from the field experiments are really very encouraging. What we see that these when an SME receive a grant, its financial returns are usually much better than the interest rate which is in the market. They build up capital short term and in the long term as well. There was an experiment that has seen after 5 years, the people who has received grants, they have 60 to 70% more capital than the people who has received loans. And then if you're giving grants, please do not attach any strings to it, because cash grants are more beneficial for buildup of capital, for improving revenues, than if you attach strings to it. Like, for example, you have to buy this thing and you have to do this thing. So without any string attached, without any conditions, if you give grants, it would definitely be more helpful to the micro entrepreneurs. So once an entrepreneur develop a little bit itself, be able to sustain in the market, and he's looking to grow. So in that, now this is the second stage of the development. So this person can now borrow money on Qard al-Hasan, which is the interest-free loan. So with the interest-free loan, now this person should return back the money that he has received, but he can keep all the profit, whatever it earns from the business. And again, looking at the experiment that has done in this area, the main benefit of giving loan instead of grant is better financial control. Better financial control in the sense that the entrepreneur is able to, the entrepreneur is responsible to return money back. So they are making sure that they have the money to return back. Their return improve on their investments. And then it helped the people in the bottom of the pyramid, a very low default rate. So once the business is capable of making good money from the interest-free loans, the next development stage would be to look for some more growth. So in that case, we propose that it could move to the microfinance. So Islamic microfinance would mean that it would be a sales transaction, maybe a murabaha or a musharaka, maybe a murabaha, or maybe a lease agreement for machinery, or in a similar way, some other mechanisms are available, Islamic microfinance, that can be used to help this micro entrepreneur to develop further. And the last stage of development is that the business has developed enough. We have the investor has the trust in the business that this business can sustain now very well. So it can generate extra capital through equity financing. We recommend that for MSMEs, standalone equity financing may not be a good solution. We need to develop a model similar to venture capital. So in that case, if you have a venture capital for MSMEs, if there are some losses here and there, the overall portfolio benefit, the overall risk will be diversified. So portfolio return would be better for the investor in that case. So given this situation of the pandemic, we believe that a model similar to what we have proposed here would be more helpful, rather than just giving debt to the MSMEs. Now, there are some issues. We cannot move to this model as we like to jump on. There are two issues with the whenever we are investing with anybody. So one issue is the issue of adverse selection, which is the investor doesn't want to select somebody who is not a good businessman, who is not a good venture. So the second issue is the moral hazard of the entrepreneur. So the investor has given the money for the business, and this micro entrepreneur, rather than investing money in the business, is now use this money for a trip or something. So these are the two issues that are associated with any lending, but with the MSMEs, it's more visible. So to deal with these issues, usually the lender prefer to look at the credit score, which is a risk-based understanding of any borrower, with the assumption that the historical behavior of a borrower would be reflected in the future as well. These are delivered in the form of like FICO score or the credit scores. There are different kind of models available to do that. I'm not going to go into too much detail of that, but there is an issue with these models. The first issue is their coverage is very low. Like if we look at globally, only 32% of the global population is covered under the credit bureau. Well, 68% is not covered. So that means these 68% of the people who are not covered under the credit bureaus are invisible to financial institutions. These are good businessmen, but these are invisible to financial institutions. So how can we help these people? So there are two intertwined issues here. One is the lack of trust of financial institution on the SME. And second is the lack of information that SME has to reduce that lack of trust. So the financial institutions would like to understand whether this person has the capital, has the collateral in case if they're not able to return back the money, and they would be able to recover by selling that collateral. What kind of character this person has? If he has the money, if he has the ability to pay, would he pay? Does he have the willingness to pay as well? Or would he use that money to go for a trip or something? And the last one is the capacity. So now you can resolve these issues if you have some documents to prove it. So for example, with the bank, if you have a bank account and the bank account is running, he's depositing money and withdrawing money every day. They have an accountant who keep their full record of everything, or they have an electronic register in their store that can maintain all the record. But unfortunately, these kind of things are not mostly available. So what left in the market is the personal guarantee. Well, this person is already a small business. His personal guarantee may not be good enough. So microfinance institutions move from the personal guarantee to the community level guarantee. So now you have put this person in double burden to pay the loan back. But anyways, the major issue is the lack of trust and lack of information. So banks are looking for the informationally transparent people to support, and that those have the financial transaction history, have credit bureau, have collateral to provide, and they're more than willing to support them. Well, most of the SMEs, and especially the micro entrepreneurs, are informationally opaque. They do not have any systematic historical record. Most probably all their receipts are in a shoebox. They're very scared of the taxman. They are most probably in the informal sector. And a lot of the cases, they do not have any collateral to offer. So now, given this situation, how we can help? So we have proposed a framework to support them, but the MSME does not have any information to provide to get that support. So now with that, there is a need for further development. And further development should be in the domain of better credit scoring model that is capable of capturing the characteristics of the borrower beside the financial information that already in the system. So in that regard, there is a lot of development what has happened, and there is something called alternative data. So we have the financial data, the financial statement, the account receivable, the accounts payable, the banking record, the financial statements. All these are good to have, but most of the MSMEs, as I mentioned, do not have those. So we resort to something called alternative data. So what this alternative data is? So say, for example, 80% of the global population has a mobile phone. So if I raise my phone now, so anybody on this screen, I ask them, most probably 99% of the people who are watching this webcast has the mobile phone. Now, this mobile phone has a lot of data on it. So what data it has? It has the data, what kind of network you have. Who is in your network? Is it university professors, bankers, street hawkers, your mother, your father, your extended family? All these information, network information is in your mobile phone. How often you upload, what you call it, put credit in your phone? How often you talk to another business? So all these informations is not available to a bank, but it is stored in your mobile phone. And this information is very relevant. There is a company named Tala, working in about 4 to 6 countries in the world now: Mexico, Kenya, Nigeria, most probably India. And for them, they provide small loans, maybe $10 to $500. The major source of information for assessing credit is mobile phone data. So from mobile phone data, they get a lot of information. So beside the mobile phone data, you have on your phone now the smartphones, the 3G, 4G, 5G phones now. You have the social media information on there as well. To support the alternative data cycle, then some information that had been used in the past, not been used before. So say, for example, somebody make the regular utility payments, the electricity, the gas, the water. So if somebody is paying these payments on time, it's most probably, if you give him loan, he will pay your money back as well on time. Rental payment is another example. There are other form of data as well, which is like, so for example, online application data or satellite data. All these informations can help banks to identify a good borrower from the bad borrower. So what I'm saying basically is that we need to move beyond our traditional finance to the digitalization of finance. And for the digitalization of finance, artificial intelligence is the bedrock for using the alternative data. But what we have to understand with the alternative data, that these data points are not in standalone very valuable, but when we use them together, they make good prediction of the creditworthiness of the borrower. And as I mentioned, that mobile phone is the key enabler. It captures huge digital footprint. Mobile phone operators are mainly now providing mobile banking, and within the mobile banking, they're providing mobile credit as well. So the mobile creditor, mobile banks would benefit from a lot from this this move, which is to get more profitability. But the real beneficiary of this move would be that the SMEs can get the loan while sitting in their home very efficiently. It will save the time, save the money. And for the mobile bank, they are meeting one of the important social responsibility as well. So if I have to summarize this whole thing, so I would say that if somebody is digitally excluded, most probably he would be financially excluded as well. So if we need to enhance the financial inclusion, we need to enhance the digital inclusion. And there are several platforms and apps that are offering now loans and equity injection through using these alternative data for analysis. So I leave these here. So these are the benefits I just have mentioned to you. But what we need to understand is, if we are moving towards the digitalization of finance, we have to understand that it might end up with financialization of fringe borrower. That means that these companies would most probably focus more on lending money to anyone who is knocking their door. And that will, at the end of the day, result with people getting more poorer and poorer. For MSMEs, as I mentioned earlier, during this pandemic time, they're already at the verge of collapse because of the debt. So if we put more debt on them through the digital finance, that's not going to be really good thing for them. So what we need to understand is that there is a need for digital infrastructure, and there is a need to back up a policy framework for that. And for that, the Islamic finance framework definitely would be very helpful. So the framework plus the digital infrastructure would empower MSMEs. So I summarized very quickly what I have said in total. The access to credit is not enough to resolve the pandemic crisis for micro enterprises. Microfinance is not a solution. It's an oversimplified approach to solve a multi-layered problem. All the stakeholders, including government, donors, technology and financial infrastructure provider, should help in identifying and prescribing the right solution for the MSMEs, which I mentioned earlier. It has to be a two-pronged strategy. The first pillar would be form a sustainable and inclusive policy, and second pillar would be developing a financial infrastructure. Already have explained that, and I'm not going to get too much detail in that. So I'll finish on this one, as I understand that you're running out of time. So thank you very much for listening. And if there is any question, I'm more than happy to answer those questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, there is one question asked by Dr. Wahbi Zakiri. You can have a look of this question at question and answer session. Wahbi Zakiri is an expert of Islamic microfinance, and he's from INSEEF. So if you can review the question in the question and answer button. So he has actually asked the question related to the staggered approach that you have.
If you could read for me, I would be very grateful.
Yes, sir.
I'm not technologically advanced.
Got it. I can read it. So Dr. Wahbi Zakiri is asking that, is it possible that only one institution or organization can cover all these 4 stages of support to the MSMEs, and how to identify at what stage are the MSMEs from the slide of staggered approach?
Yeah. Okay, I do not believe that a single institution would be able to provide all in one. My understanding is that there should be 4 different kind of institution, but they all should be aligned, and there should be a graduation approach within them. So say, for example, a donor can provide grant to begin with. Government can provide the grant as well. So this could be 1 time or at max 2 times injection, and thereafter this person, the micro enterprise who has received grant, should start having its own digital footprint. So digital footprint means all the invoices, all the information, try to use the digital cash register, try to use the mobile phone for mobile banking for the payment and receipt. So this way it will start developing its digital footprint. And the second step would be moving towards the interest-free loans. So an organization like a Huwat can take over from the grant to this level, and then from there it could move to more towards the microfinance institution, and then the venture capital. The venture capital can take at any point in time any micro enterprise, but the best idea would be to take a mature micro enterprise which has less of the financial risk. Business risk is there, you cannot avoid that, but less of the financial risk, so that the venture capital can earn some profit together with the small business.
Got it, sir. Thank you very much. I think Wahbi Zakiri is clear about the question that you have told that all these 4 types cannot be used by an organization simultaneously. Thank you very much. Dr. Dawood Ashraf has told us about very much clear about the staggered approach. He has also talked about the adverse selection and the importance of mobile phone data for banks, which is not being used in Pakistan still. So we need for that improvements in Pakistani banking sector. Thank you very much, Dawood Ashraf, for being here. I'm really thankful to you for the part of this journey. Thanks a lot. So now let's go to the next session, addressing. Our next participant is Mr. Dr. Kabeer Hasan, who is from the Department of Economics and Finance, University of New Orleans. He has done a lot of work in research and in the industry as well. Let me quickly go through his introduction, and then we'll start the session from with Mr. Kabeer. Professor Dr. Muhammad Kabeer Hasan is a professor of finance in the Department of Economics and Finance in University of New Orleans. He currently holds three endowed chairs: Habrina Professor of Economics and Finance, Hancock Whitney Chair Professor in Business, and Bank One Professor in Business in the University of New Orleans. Professor Hassan is the winner of the 2016 Islamic Development Bank Prize in Islamic Banking and Finance. Professor Hassan received his BA in Economics and Mathematics from Gustavus or Adolphus College, Minnesota, USA, and MA in Economics and PhD in Finance from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, USA, respectively. Professor Hassan is a financial economist with consulting research and teaching experiences in development finance, money and capital markets, Islamic finance, corporate finance, and Transparency International Bangladesh Development Bank, United Nations Development Program, Government of Turkey, and many private organizations. Professor Hassan has been elected as a board member of Ethics and Governor Committee and Education Board of the Accounting and Auditing Organization for the Islamic Financial Institution, IOFI. We call it in a shorter abbreviation form. He has a lot of introduction but I have very short time. Without any delay in time, I would like to call Mr. Dr. Kabeer to please come here and address about the impact of COVID-19 outbreak on MSMEs and way forward for Islamic financial institutions. Please, Mr. Kabeer. Mr. Kabeer, please, are you listening to me?
Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you, and I can also see your screen. Thank you.
Okay, actually, I gave a different topic to present, so I'm not really ready for SMEs, but I think that is some relevant. Anyway, Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So we have this discussion and debate in Islamic finance industry. So what is the difference between the rates that we see between conventional and Islamic finance, and what are the reasons behind it? So there has been a lot of interest in this area, and the prohibition of interest is the, crux of Islamic finance, along with other attributes of doing Islamic finance. So we said that Islamic banks are more stable and resilient to economic shocks, primarily because of the asset links, interest-free nature of contracts. And there has been a few studies done in this area. Since Islamic banks are interest-free, current monetary policy framework may not work efficiently for Islamic banks in countries with dual banking system. And recognizing how interest rates affect Islamic banking in a dual banking system is necessary to formulate sound policies that could potentially detach and completely segregate Islamic banking from conventional banking system. So that gives me the motivation to find the link between monetary policy, interest rates, and Islamic bank rates. And that's a controversial issue. And due to the establishment of Islamic windows by conventional banks, and because of the third-party transactions between customers and dual banking system, the liquidity in Islamic and conventional banking system remain entwined. And many empirical studies demonstrated a statistically significant relationship between Islamic banks' profit rates and conventional banks' interest rates. And that really starts to debate why that is so. Now, the past studies conclude that Islamic banks are imitative of conventional banks. So it's a mimicking industry, implicitly follow the conventional banks when setting their investment and financing rates. So the Islamic banks' rates are neither inherently asset linked nor interest free. And the competition among and the market power Islamic and conventional banks have been primary determinants of such a rate following strategy. And there has been a number of empirical studies done. Now, there are two channels of rate spillover: the homogeneous monetary and money market policies in a dual banking system. So you have the same policy rate for both for Islamic banks and conventional banks. The market forces that affect the two banks when competing for the same customer base. So here we are bringing the issue of degree of religiosity among pious customers makes them less sensitive to competition, superseding their profit motive. On the other hand, based on rational choice theory, the profit-driven customers are more likely to be guided by the need for utility maximization. So there is a co-movement of Islamic and conventional rates establish a trade-off between religious and economic fundamentals. So what is the objective in this paper? So main objective of the study is to determine whether Islamic banking implicitly follow conventional banks in their rate setting behavior. And we consider rates of Islamic banks, conventional banks, and monetary policy rates from Malaysia. The reason we choose Malaysia because IFSB 2019 cites Malaysia as one of the 12 systemically important Islamic finance jurisdictions in the world. And the Central Bank of Malaysia, Bank Negara Malaysia, uses its overnight policy rate to influence the conventional money market, and an area of Sharia compliant instruments are used to influence the liquidity in Islamic money market. So, of course, it's an empirical work. So we have to develop some hypotheses based on what has been done. So Islamic banks may suffer from liquidity surplus simply due to lack of compliant money market instruments. This management potentially presents conventional banks with arbitrage opportunities, providing lower borrowing costs for conventional banks. And to prevent such arbitrage opportunity, Bank Negara Malaysia offers returns on Islamic money market instruments that are very similar to conventional money market returns. So in the long run, Islamic interbank benchmark rate was not found to be independently determined from their corresponding conventional interbank offer rates for the 5 GCC countries in one study and 6 other countries including Malaysia in another study. So the policy rate should have no influence on Islamic money market rates for the Sharia compliant instruments. However, due to the segregation of the Islamic conventional banking in dual banking system, central bank uses its interest-based monetary policy rate as a signaling tool in the conventional money market. Therefore, Islamic bank rates have failed to get the recognition as a true Sharia compliant interbank rate. So we develop our first hypothesis. We show that Islamic rates are not asset linked and are dependent on conventional rates and monetary rates, both in the short and the long run. And following are the major reasons behind rate dependency identified the existing studies: displaced commercial risk by IFSB 2017, maturity of investment, Sukman and Ibrahim, selection and availability of benchmark rates, competition and market power, and the type of contracts in operation. So 4 major hypotheses emerged so far. First, PLS-based versus transaction-based financial contracts. Under the PLS, it has been very difficult for banks to adjust their deposit rates with the change of market interest rate. And several studies accuse that TBF mode has made many jurists and practitioners to devise clever arrays of contracts and formalities to allow ways in which interest could be charged and paid. Second, regulation, regulatory infrastructure, and monetary policy. And there is a general lack of concern about the application of approved Islamic financial principles by Islamic banks in Malaysia. Harun, Anwar, so these are the studies that has been done. Third, competition, market size, and market power. And market power of banks pushed the Islamic and conventional rates to co-move over time. And bank deposit rate in Malaysia was found to be significantly influenced by the market sentiment, which was a combined influence of local, regional, and global factors. And fourth, type of bank customers. Based on utility maximization theory, Harun and Ahmed argue that deposit in Islamic banks are driven by the profit motive and is negatively affected by the conventional bank rates. Conversely, following the rational choice, demand for Islamic banking from profit-driven customers are likely to be highly rate elastic. So that brings to our second hypothesis. Islamic Bank's customers are profit driven and Islamic Bank's products are not asset linked, and these rates depend on the maturity match, conventional bank rates as well as monetary policy rate. That brings to sub-hypothesis. Islamic investment account holders are generally profit-driven customers, and Islamic investment deposit rates are not asset-linked, interest-based, and dependent on the maturity-matched conventional fixed deposit rates as well as the monetary policy rate. And second, the borrower, those who borrow money from Islamic banks, are generally profit-driven customers, and Islamic financing rates are not asset-linked, interest-based, and dependent on the maturity matched conventional lending rates as well as the monetary policy rate. So we have 6 different empirical model, and we show dependent variable how they are interacted with. Like for example, just look at one model number 1. OPR stands for overnight policy rate. OBNIB is the overnight Islamic money market rate, and OBNOB is the overnight conventional money market rate. So we use these 6 different types of model in order to test our hypothesis. Model 1, impacts on Islamic overnight interbank deposit rate. This model essentially tests hypothesis 1. In this model, the relationship between overnight Islamic money market rate with the overnight conventional money market rate and overnight policy rate are examined. Model 2, all the different variation of this model is tested. 2.1 hypothesis, and this model tests the relationship of 1 month, 3 months, 6 month, 9 month, 12 month Islamic investment deposit rates with the respective maturity matchment conventional fixed deposit rates and overnight interbank deposit rate. And model 3, impacts on average Islamic financing rate, the rate that Islamic bank charge to their customers or borrowers. Hypothesis 2.2 we test with this model 3, and this model tests the relationship between average Islamic financing rate, average conventional lending rate, and average Islamic bank's base financing rate. So we use methodology that has been used in other studies: specification, robustness, and diagnostic test. We use the ARDL model, short run and long run estimate using, and we also do causality testing. So these are our empirical methodology that you use. So now coming back some of the results. So this is some of the empirical, the descriptive statistics in model 1. Standard deviation for overnight Islamic banking rate is higher than overnight conventional banking rate, indicating low stability for overnight Islamic banking rate. But in model 2, all the IDIBs, Islamic banks in financing rate, show lower standard deviation compared to their maturity matched FDFC and profit rate, indicating higher stability of IDB. So in model 3, standard deviation of Islamic financing rate is higher than conventional financing rate, and so on. So what it will be very difficult to follow what I'm trying to say here, but let me go some of the main results. So ARDL estimation, model 1, we have a table 5. Results for model 1 show that the rates on Sharia compliant instrument is to influence the overnight Islamic bank are linked to the policy rate and consequently to conventional interest rates. So what does it conclude? The results suggest that two banking systems are integrated. Model 2, we have this error correction model. Conventional fixed deposits and Islamic investment deposits are competitive substitutes for each other in the short run. And we have the error correction. If you see error correction, the last row here. On this note, the percentage of disequilibrium created in the previous period that is corrected during each subsequent period are approximately given by the coefficients, like 62% from overnight NYB model 1, 3%, 9%, 12%, 17%. That gives you, if it is out of equilibrium, how long does it take to come back to the equilibrium. But on the long run coefficients, results indicate the majority of investment account holders are profit-driven customers. And due to their sensitivity to the competition between the Islamic and conventional banking sectors, the Islamic investment deposit rates are affected by conventional fixed deposit rates. And due to the use of overnight policy rate, the Islamic investment deposit rates are also affected by conventional interest rates through the Islamic money market. So therefore, again, we prove these rates are neither asset linked nor interest free. And third model 7 in our table, in our paper, shows that there is no immediate effect of change in conventional lending rates on the Islamic bank financing rates, although there is an impact over time. The short-run coefficient of this Islamic bank investment rate is positive and statistically significant 10% level, whereas the long-term coefficient is positive but not statistically significant. So we also have correlation of this rolling standard deviation. Following another paper, the results in table 9 show that variability Islamic bank rates is closely associated with the variability in conventional bank rates and the monetary policy rates. The correlation between Islamic financing rates and conventional lending rates are positive, but this correlation is not as strong as it is for investment deposit rates. These findings are consistent with ARDL estimation and support the notion that most of the investment account holders are profit-driven customers, whereas most of the borrowers from Islamic banks are more religiously motivated. Then you also do the same thing by using bidirectional causality to the Yamato causality test. The pairwise causality direction models 1 and 3 show bidirectional causality between Islamic and conventional rates. For the all submodels in table 2, there are unidirectional causality running from the conventional fixed deposit rates to Islamic investment deposit rates. Further, model 1 shows that bidirectional causality between overnight Islamic money market rates and overnight policy rates. And for other models, the results show unidirectional causality running from the monetary policy rates to the Islamic banking rates.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
your very summary. Thank you very much.
let me finish.
Yes.
So the summary,
Yes,
the conventional Islamic bank rates, model 2 and 3 results indicate the Islamic banks are profit-driven customers. The ARDL results show the Islamic investment deposit and conventional fixed deposit are substitutes for each other. And since investment deposit, time deposit due to profit motive, some immediately transfer their funds to the more attractive conventional fixed deposit accounts, thereby initiating short-run effects. And the short-run events showing Islamic deposit base and reduced funds for available for funding. So what I'm trying to tell is that we really need to rethink about Islam monetary policy and a dual banking system. When the monetary policy shocks settle down, Islamic banks are unable to adjust the profit rates on their TBF contracts, and higher policy rate is reflected in general prices. Since liability Islamic banks constitute investment deposit account based on PLS mode with variable profit rates, Islamic banks may not generate enough profit from financing activities to compensate their investment account holders with the higher returns that were expected in previous periods. To retain the profit-driven IAH, Islamic banks raise their investment deposit as a reaction to DCR, is that's called displaced commercial rate, which can potentially destabilize their operation. Therefore, in a dual banking environment, changes in monetary policy stance affects Islamic banks and different magnitude compared to conventional banks. So in a dual banking system, we must rethink the monetary policy so that we can develop the Islamic financing industry. They're coming up with a different policy rate for the Islamic banks only. So in that area, not much work has been done, and we have to devote our energy in order to develop this area, both conceptually, empirically, and for policy making bodies to help them. So that's all. Thank you very much. We do not hear you.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Kabeer Sahab. That was really very much interesting article by comparing the Islamic and conventional bank rates and profits. And you're saying that they are very much closely linked with one another. So we need to develop the monetary policy from the base root so that Islamic system can be differentiated widely as compared to the conventional banks. So that's really, and you have also told that rates of banks, the Islamic banks are not asset linked, and they are not interest free as well. So, and both interest rates of Islamic and commercial and conventional banks are very much linked with one another. So the base, the Islamic banks are following the base of the conventional banks. So you're very much right, and you have proved from this article. That was very informative session, and we are really thankful to you for joining this session, Professor Dr. Kabeer Saab. Please stay with us, and we are gonna start a panel discussion. And now I forward my mic towards Dr. Mr. Rehan Muzzamil, who will be session chair for the panel discussion. Thank you very much again for Dr. Kabeer Saab. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Arsalaan.
Uh,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arsalaan. A wonderful session, mashallah. I welcome the session members, Dr. Moha Asri Abdullah, Professor Dr. Zuljisri Abdul Razak, Dr. Betania, Mr. Azhar Aslam, and Mufti Dr. Ahmed Khan. I think if we talk about this session, I think it is a little bit unique in comparison to the whole, because I think the more concentration on the Islamic banking and participants, they have been comparing what is currently going on. And very rightly, as Dr. Kabeer and several others have identified, that even though we claim that Islamic banking and financial systems are unique and different from the conventional banking, and it has been repeatedly highlighted that practically things are just maybe sometimes following the conventional banking. So I think this panel has an additional responsibility as an academician as well as professionals to highlight the ethical and moral values and how an independent model could be suggested rather than following the conventional banking system. So in that sense, I would request, first of all, Professor Dr. Moha Asri Abdullah. He is the Faculty of Economics and Management Sciences in International Islamic University with several publications and specialization in small business entrepreneurship. And I would especially like him to highlight the very recent concept of halal entrepreneurship. Over to you, Dr. Moha.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
First and foremost, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the organizing committee for having me here. It's an honor, even though it is about 15 minutes or so for me to talk on this. So let me share my slides. As I was asked to share this particular topics on the pandemic COVID-19 and understanding concepts and emerging needs for entrepreneurship. So I was asked first to sort of share on the concepts of entrepreneurships. Well, no problems. Just that the times perhaps a bit of a constraint on me to fulfill the things that is requested, because I would like to actually more or less address these 7 particular questions in this context of how do we define entrepreneurships first, and what is the entrepreneurships from a Akashic Sharia perspective. And if possible, I would try to differentiate between the two halapreneurships or halapreneurs versus entrepreneurs. In particular, before we coin for a little bit of a conceptual business frameworks from entrepreneurship concepts, And if possible, also, I would like to share on the why halapreneurs this day are essential economically in views of COVID pandemics today, and how this entrepreneurship can be sustainable. And then I would like to wrap up my thoughts sharing session here with what are core emerging forces for halapreneurships. All right, I think all of you knows that the halapreneurs, let me share. I don't know whether can you see my slides? Can you? All right. What's our entrepreneurs? First and foremost, of course, entrepreneurs come from the words of entrepreneur, from French words. That means to undertake. They want. I don't want to prolong on this because the slides about 16 slides. I got it, but I have thoughts in 15 minutes. There are slides that where I have to emphasize a little bit more. So let me skip. So what is halal entrepreneurship stance? Of course, we should look at halal entrepreneurships from the overall integral parts of Islamic religions. It's considered as Fisabilillah as well, because in a way it's upholding the teachings of Islam, as well as alleviates its symbols. And it is also concepts that whereby the roles of human beings as vicegerents, Khalifa in this world, to develop, to create, to prosper the worlds, as also means the activities continue to provide good, and not just good and services, but also prosperity to the society. How do we define halapreneurs? Okay, we should say that any Muslims entrepreneurs who produce goods and services and complies with Maqasid Sharia, comply with the Sharia, is known as halapreneurs, of course. But how then non-Muslims entrepreneurs who comply with Sharia guidelines and principles initiate halal goods and services? So some scholars say this should be also considered halapreneur, because so long as for maslahah or public interest points of view, as they are providing goods and services for the Muslims, especially if we live in non-Muslim majority countries. These things are plentiful, I suppose. And of course, I would like to, I have a couple of ayat here. I think I skipped that one. But what is most important, it's not just about halal, of course. The concepts of halapreneur should encompass the three parts as well. All right, it's not just about permitted, allowables, lawful, but also good, wholesome, and safe. This is what entrepreneurs should focus on, not just about permissible, because the goods practices, the wholesome, the safe for the products for Muslim to consume, or for the Ummah, or for other non-Muslim society or communities to consume it, will be considered as parts of the entrepreneurship, halal entrepreneurships. All right, let me go to the halapreneursip that is falls or categorized or includes within the concepts of Maqasid Sharia. Of course, we know that the 5 pillars of Maqasid Sharia, each and individual components in this pillar, we can integrate with entrepreneurial elements in. I don't have the time to explain it. I hope I can get another platforms later in future to share a much more meaningful times on this. But as halapreneurs, we should look at in two main perspectives. The first one is, of course, complying religious points of view. It's obligations that must be fulfilled by every Muslims. And of course, is ensuring consumers along the way to consume products in the halal and tayyibans, which is obligatory for competent Muslim authority to take up. Another element is that from business point of view, Of course, we have this business point of view. Halal industries today is growing very much, the emerging trends. We have to integrate between the two, whereby good business opportunities, be it at local levels, or be it at national, regional, and global levels. So it's a kind of a lucrative markets for halapreneurs, I suppose. If I may concur here, I would like to share a little bit on the 7 salient points, the difference between halapreneurs and entrepreneurs. I don't want to go to each and individual points, but I will emphasize on a few points which are important for us to share, to be shared here. First is, what is the halapreneurs as opposed to entrepreneurs? Of course, it is halapreneur should produce goods that is permissible, is needed, all right? And the goods must be according to priority of needs in the society context. We can have like necessity good first, all right? Perhaps beverage and drinks, food and beverage, and then basic needs, of course, comply with clothing, shelter, spouse, in addition to food and services. And then we go to move to comfort, luxury. So we have cascading a priority amongst halapreneurs to think of and to initiate and produce good and provide services along that lines. This is not within the context of normal entrepreneurs, of course. How do we produce? Of course, we have to focus on efficiency and productivity, educative efficiencies, effective efficiencies, in addition to profits. So all the process, right from startups of capitals, all right, to the marketings, distributions, all business components, plannings, organizations, initiating, stimulating influence, as well as measurings. This management basic concept should be integrated to realize efficiency and productivity in the systems. Of course, this is a way more or less similar to entrepreneurs, but keeping in view, all right, of the importance of Islamic components in it. What I would like, another points that I would like to share along this differences is that the motivational factors, whereby supposedly entrepreneurs should focus on the profits and of course al-falah, all right, as opposed to normal entrepreneurs. And as far as the another component,
excuse me, sorry to interrupt you. I'm really sorry to interrupt you. Actually, this is a type of panel discussion actually. So we are actually trying to give 5 to 6 minutes to every participant in the panel discussion, and they will elaborate their idea into 4 to 5 minutes, and then we will have a combined discussion of this panel. So I request you to try to wind it up in 1 or 2 minutes so that we will start the next panel discussion, and then we will have a panel discussion.
So you give me another 2 minutes. How come?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So let's look at another point. Is that in order for us to have a conceptual framework of halapreneurs business, it has coming from Tawhid. It's as core of religious experience, whereby 3 major components should be there. First is, of course, as entrepreneurs, halapreneurs, we have to have God conscious, Tawhid. Within that, we have accountability, cooperation, intentions, benevolence, which is Hasan, as well as justice. All right. I cannot explain that much because I'm being restricted here. But let's look at what has been the main business components of halapreneurships. Right, as mentioned earlier, there are at least 6 major components whereby halapreneurs follow and process from, right, in halal industry, of course, we kind of coming from farm to fork kind of system or supply chain industry. So right from feed mills to the environment concern. So these are the components that we should learn. Another point, another perspective of this is the more halapreneurs are emerging economically. All right, so I would like to share on this that, of course, today we have increasing demands for convenience as well as packaged food and beverage in Muslim nations. Of course, increase in economic developments in Muslim countries, per capita income has risen, all right. Also rise in the Muslim populations. We have the rapid growing rates of population as opposed to the other religions. So that's platforms for the bigger markets coming in the near future. And also to the forecast of this. Another point comes to substantiate this one is that global halal market today, in terms of the value, right from 2016 to 2024 expected values, all right, the size is growing right from 2 trillion to 3.2 trillion. This is what the figures from global economic, global Islamic economic reports, all right, as of today, last year. And last but not least, perhaps I would like to share the 10 core emerging forces for halal today, whereby it's also because of growing Muslim populations. Another force is growing purchasing powers of the populations, Muslim populations, all right, increasing religious inclinations that, of course, results in demand growing for halal food and services. And of course, digital connectivity that makes these Muslim nations to connect and relate one another to produce goods and services and to consume those goods and services. Ethical consumerism, of course, investor returns. For investors also, they would like to see their capital's growth. So as halal industry is emerging growing industry, it would not be reluctant for them to embark and invest in these areas. And also in terms of policies and regulations today, all right, we have seen that many governments, especially in Muslim countries, increase government supports, incentive grants, policy and standards coming to prop this infrastructure or settings the structure of industry to be in the platforms that are growing bigger and bigger in the near future. All right, also increase in the halal, increase in the halal trades, of course, today, and also economic diversifications and developments, and also growing multinational growth through halal industry like Nestle, you name it. In fact, the many multinational corporations, do not have hesitates to embark on this halal industry. All right, what should entrepreneurs, halal entrepreneurs do in order to be sustainable? If you look at this survey, all right, the survey shows that the brands that champion sustainability going on the rise, right from the year 2013 to the year 2015. And what is more important here is that what the consumer sees willingness to pay more if we have the foods, the beverages that moving toward healthy and wellness benefits. So this is very much in line with the halal industry. So
yes,
in order to sustain the market should gear toward this nature of demands in the near future. And they should start right now to be sustainable. I think that's all about comments. I don't want to be interrupted here. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jazakallah. Your last point about the consumer, we will discuss with as a panel discussion. Immediately, we will go to Professor Dr. Zuljistri Abdul Razak, who is from Department of Finance and Internationalization, Kuliya of Economics and Management Science, International Islamic University, Malaysia, following up on the concept of halalpreneurship, and it covers definitely a lot of dimensions. We would, Professor, like you to highlight the global issues regarding how we can benefit from this halalpreneurship into the global context, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and the panel. Thank you for also having me here. I'm trying to load the slide. Can you all see the slide?
No, Professor, if you can continue on, because as we do not have a lot of time, we can discuss on the topic.
I just
you want me to share the slide?
I'm already getting it.
Try to share the slide.
Yeah, just a second.
Yes, sir. You have the right to share the slides. So
no, because the slide has been prepared.
Or if it's difficult for you, then I have your slides. I can share, please.
Oh, yeah. Can you please do that? Yeah, thank you. It's easier for
Got
me.
it. So I think these are your slides. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. We can see it
Okay,
now.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Thank you very much. On my part, I've given the assignment to discuss the impact of SME during the COVID crisis. Okay, so I will focus on Malaysia, but at the same time, I also talk about others. SME is defined in Malaysia is actually a small medium enterprise, also touched in the earlier speech by some of the earlier scholars. Yeah. But for Malaysia, it is actually started in 1971, and we call it the new economic scheme, purposely to serve and upgrade social welfare of the people. Okay. In the particular case, it's also inserted in our 7 and 8 Malaysian plan, right? SME has a very important function, okay, in Malaysia because it ties up with economic growth. As you can see from the figure, 37% in 2005, and then it's increased to 2010 to 38. So now it's probably about 40 or 50% of GDP. Therefore, we have to take care and nurture the SME, especially in the in the recent COVID-19 crisis. What is the impact? Because a failure of SME will also result in failure in job opportunities, right? Lower employment rate, so on and so forth. So in Malaysia, each country will have its own definition, but in Malaysia, we categorize it into what they call it by sales turnover, and also by by employment. Okay, so micro actually is right down below there. Okay, less than 300,000 and less than 5 employees. So the impact of lockdown actually started in March this year, and it has affected cash flow, right? Cash flow of SME because they are not able to generate sales. So what I mean by this is that they have fixed costs, right, which are already put down there. Employees rental. This is something that they have to pay, but they could not generate the income because no sales. Okay, but they could not have it. So what the government does is to increase this stimulus package. Yeah? We have spent up to 250 billion to support. Before I go to the packages, I'd just like to share the SME financial institution in Malaysia. But it's divided into financial institution. We have commercial and Islamic banks, and we also have they have microfinance scheme, development finance institution. In this case, they are specialized institution like agro bank, SME, import export bank, and also central bank. Central bank in this case supervises all the commercial banks. They have also microfinance scheme. We also have microfinance institution. In Malaysia, we call it AIMS. All right. This is very much what they call it model, very much the same as the Grameen Bank. Okay? Grameen Bank is a bankless bank, and we also have Tekun for small business. Then we have other government agencies, right, to develop entrepreneurs and small businesses. So as I said, this is our primary NGO, Amanah Ikhtiar Malaysia. Okay, established in 1987. I say it's modeled by the Grameen Bank. It is very successful in the sense that it's meant for women, very low NPL. And these are some of the schemes that is provided. Okay, these are some of the products, as you can see there. And we also have one. This is interesting. We call it Waqaf An-Nur. Waqaf An-Nur actually is a corporation under Johor State. It's one of our state in Malaysia. This is following the concept of cash waqaf. This is something I would like to discuss later in the panel, how we could mobilize cash waqf, okay? Which is actually also understand one of the topic of this conference. Because all this while we've been going through traditional banks. We were going to issue interest rate products. So question is that Islamic, all right? Now, the interesting part of it that 70% is invested in cash waqf, and the money they use is for other business purposes. And then 25% is used to make mosques, Okay, this is actually what we're trying to say as far as the social needs of the microfinance is concerned. They need some kind of a wakaf, we call that support. So wakaf means voluntary or a rather charitable contribution, okay, without any interest, so on and so forth. So in this case, it's very much based on the mosque, as I said. It's related to the imams as volunteers. And Akwat, okay, Akwat is very familiar in Pakistan. It's a very good model that you're having there. Okay, we appreciate very much, interest-free, also mosque-based, all right, voluntary contribution from society. And it's been very successful. I understand, before the COVID, I went there several times in Lahore, actually, but I couldn't have a chance to visit Akwat. I wanted to go in March, but well, it's COVID, we didn't go. There's another model here in Indonesia, which is
So you are
also
welcome again.
commoditized.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
After
Yeah,
the
I'm
COVID.
really
Thank you.
looking forward to see the Aquat model there. So in Indonesia, it's also the same thing, also based on microfinance, most based. This is very successful. I understand from my Indonesian colleague. They give economic empowerment to help the poor, and they select good values. People who have very good track record, and again based on Qadr Hasan. Qadr Hasan is interest free. Okay. Now, as mentioned earlier, I'll go very fast. I think by the earlier opening, MSME are different type of organization. Okay, there are actually people who have a very limited constraint. All right. Now, this business, they don't have collateral. All right. Some of them registered, but some also not registered. In other words, some are not also considered quote unquote illegal, but they are doing their small business. Okay. They are not bankable. Issue of financial inclusion was mentioned just now. Insufficient income. So how are we going to help these people? All right. In the time of what do you call that? In the time of COVID here, how are we going to assist? So what the government did was actually give sort of four kind of assistance. One, they call it salary subsidy. So here the government gave a wage subsidy of $600 a month, and to just like the business float. Okay, they don't give the wage subsidy, then how are they going to pay? All right. So in other words, they want to sustain this business. Then they give micro grant. They give moratorium. I'm sure you've heard by now. They give up to 6 months. They're going to extend again, because if they pay their loan now, there's just no way they're going to survive. Okay, they can even live on their own, and how are they going to pay the loan? And also give new financing scheme. All right. So again, as I said, we've been discussing a lot on monetary, or what you call that, banking kind of facilities, but not as much has been discussed on WAF. Okay, WAF, zakat, and sadaqah. So I think this should be the way in future. And as my conclusion, this is what I've said also. There are financial constraints in MSE, basically due to the lack of capital, lack of collateral, financial literacy. Some of them do not know how to put a business account, let alone manage their account. So these are the issues that we need to really look at. And they are fixed costs. There's no way that they can do it. They need to re-engineer themselves, as mentioned just now. Look at digitalization, marketing using we have what we call it, Shopee or Lazada, yeah, using online. All right, but most of it, I would urge that discussion should be looked at the real economy. Okay, don't look at the banking. They are not bankable. So there's no point talking about that. We should look at the real Islamic values, like social finance. For
Right.
example, zakat, wakaf, and sadaqah.
Thank you very much for summarizing. And I think the last line summarizes it all. As you said,
Yes,
that it's not about just banking, it's about the whole system. And how can waqf and zakat and sadaqat be incorporated into conventional finances and businesses? Very knowledgeable, mashallah. Next, we will go to Dr. Betania Kartika, Muflih. She is currently assistant professor and head of Halal awareness and information and outreach in International Islamic University, Malaysia. And she will be talking about some ethical issues in finances. Thank you. Over to you. Dr. Betania.
Yes.
Can we summarize it in 5-6 minutes, please?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Thank you very much for the time given and thank you for the invitation. For this very short time, I would like to convey a little message about what we are actually doing in this particular time. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it is business or other stuff. So here I would like to call it maybe, as I have been discussing with Rehan Saab, yeah, last night, what should I talk? And it is more on the ethical or the moral, we call it maybe integrity. So first of all, I would like to convey this Islamic, Quranic verse, which says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, wa ma khalaqtul jinna wal insa illa liya'budun," which means that I created not jinn and man except that they might worship me. And we have listened to, mashallah, big scholars before this during the introduction, as well as from Prof Moha and Prof Zulajastri. We learned from them a lot. And I would like to remind myself here especially that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we are created for none but worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mean that whatever, any activity that we are doing should be oriented to be or to have the servitude value. And what about when we are doing business, for example? So any activity that we are doing, how can it be worship or ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There are two main components. Number one is that we have correct intention. We do everything lillahi ta'ala, inshallah. And then the second one is that we are following the correct guidelines from the Quran as well as from the Sunnah. So with these two components, which are correct intentions as well as correct Sharia that we are following, or the correct guidelines, yeah, from Quran and Sunnah, the main idea, the main basic or the foundation of whatever we are doing, the integrity or the highest morality that we should apply in our business and in our other activities is ihsan. So that is actually when we are talking about ihsan here, the ihsan is the fruit. Yeah, the ihsan is the highest morality in doing all the things. So what is ihsan? It's in hadith, yeah, Badul Wahi. Rasulullah SAW was asked, yeah, Mal ahsan? Qala, yeah, Rasulullah SAW, Al ahsan an ta'budallah ka'annaka tarahu fa illam takun tarahu fa innahu yarak. So when Rasulullah SAW was asked what ihsan is, why do we base our business, our daily activities with ihsan, and that will be the control in doing all the stuff, is that you worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you don't see Him, know that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you. And this will become the highest morality that we will apply this in all things that we are doing in ibadah, because now we understand that ibadah is not merely things that we are doing for namaz, for salat, for saum, for our fasting, zakat, sadaqah and all this, as well as Hajj. But each and everything what we are doing is indeed the worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how are we going to relate this to the now situation, yeah, the during COVID or post-COVID, that we know there are lots of things that affected us, affected entrepreneurs, the business everywhere, the global business all over the world. But for us, alhamdulillah, for the believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised very good things that أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بلى من أسلم وجهه لله وهو محسن فله أجره عند ربه ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. And this is a very glad tidings for everybody, for the entrepreneurs, for us, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, whoever submits his face or himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yeah, and at the same time, this person is also muhsin. So muhsin, like what we have just explained before from the hadith, an ta'budallah ka'annaka tarahu fa illam takun tarahu fa huwa yarak. So Allah has promised this muhsin. When we are doing business, we are muhsin. When we are teaching, we are muhsin. When we are doing any other activities, we are muhsin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the promise of reward from Allah. And the best one is that no fear, no grief. This one is in the world and hereafter. So this should be, big motivation for us, that it doesn't matter the loss, for example, or how slow the business is, but inshallah at the same time, when we do it for Allah and we are muhsin at the same time, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will sustain us and will give us way in the future. So the last one that I would like to share here is that we are following what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was giving us, the qudwah hasana, and we know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was also very great a businessman, merchant, entrepreneur, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him very, very excellent characteristics, siddiq, yeah, amana, fatana, and tabligh. And especially here, when we talk about fatana, fatana is indeed the being very smart, yeah, being smart. That we keep this fatana will lead Muslim entrepreneurs to be always creative, innovative, aggressive in entrepreneurship endeavors. So this helps us, the Muslimpreneurs, yeah, to overcome whatever the things that we are undergoing now, maybe loss, maybe slow, like what I have mentioned, to be always يعني حسن الظن لله تعالى, always have a positive thinking that there are a lot more opportunities open for everybody, inshallah. Wallahu alam bisawab, and thank you very much. Thank you, Rehan sir.
Jazakallah. Thank you very much. We will immediately go to our next speaker, Dr. Mufti Ahmad Khan, and he is assistant professor in University of Malir and advisor, executive committee of Halal Awareness and Research Council, Karachi, Pakistan. He will talk about some international trade issues and investments, halal investments. Over to you, Dr. Mufti Ahmad Khan sahab. Can you hear me? Ahmad Khan, Mr. Ahmad Khan? Are you with us, Ahmad Khan sahab? आपका माइक ऑफ है डॉक्टर अहमद खान.
He around?
I can see his name, but his mic is off. Mr. Azhar Aslam, are you with us?
We are really sorry for this inconvenience, please. So Mr. Rehan is actually contacting the person. I think Mr. Ahmed Khan is here. Mr. Ahmed Khan, are you listening to me, please? Or we can start from any other panel member who is here, Mr. Azhar Aslam or Mr. Ahmed Khan, or if any of them are there, then please join.
We will try to connect to them. In the meantime, Dr. Zuljistri, if you would like to comment on some of the other issues, and we can try to connect to the other speakers in the meantime. We were discussing about the holistic approach rather than just the investment side. Could you please highlight, rather than the conventional capitalistic concept of maximization of wealth and sharing it with others as Hasan, with other stakeholders? Could you highlight on this issue, please?
Yeah, actually, this issue already mentioned by Prof. Prof. Moha. He mentioned about Makasid perspective. Okay, all this while we are too relying on the traditional banking. So in other words, we trade money as a commodity, and we sell money, and so we have inflation, and bank is making money out of nothing. Unfortunately, the Islamic banking is also following the same way, because their products are all based on debt products, like Murabaha, Tawaruk, things like this. So we are charging the way forward, and yet customers are not able to pay. So when it come in COVID-19, this is actually what happened, They are indebted, and the moratorium is supposed to relieve them. But the question is, how long will that be? Because, the situation is getting worse and worse, you see. So we give them 6 months, not enough. We give them 12 months, not enough. So in the end, the bank will eventually take all the asset, and the bank is creating money to do that. So the question is our model correct? This is the thing I'm asking just now. We have our traditional model like wakaf, zakat, sadaqah. These are the things that the Muslims should be investing on, Look at it, zakat, they are ashnaf. These ashnaf are eligible. And I'll show you the Indonesian model. They take into consideration and wakaf. There's so much potential wakaf, cash wakaf. We need to explore. And especially for these people, they are not bankable, you know. How are you going to charge? So this is my initial comment on this, you know. We should look
Sir,
at
I
this.
want to ask another question regarding this, as the presentation given by Dr. Professor Dr. Kabeer Saab, that he has mentioned about that there is a very much strong link between the conventional rate and the halal and the Islamic rates. So, what's your comment about this? The base of the conventional rates are they, do they have a strong linkage, and how can they be changed in the monetary policy?
You see, my experiment or the empirical work was done in the context of Malaysia, because it is a very highly developed dual banking system. And the central bank has a policy rate, also central bank has Islamic money market rate. But unfortunately, when we analyze the data from the commercial banking perspective, there from the liability side and asset side, and also for conventional banks, my main hypothesis was that the banking industry does, fixed rate financing, Morabaha banking, and Morabaha banking will be behaving exactly this way. The question is ultimately the deeper question, whether Islamic bank can do really bring the maqasid of Sharia or essence of Islamic finance. So I'm not really arguing against that abolish Islamic banking. Islamic banking we need, but it will be very similar to conventional banks. But in order to make some space for them, the central bank have to come up with some accommodating benchmark rate. And LIBOR will be gone, and actually AUFI is doing a study to come up with a new benchmark for Islamic financial services industry. Unfortunately, we do not have any benchmark. So at least
Yes.
Malaysian central bank has developed something, but I don't think that in Pakistan it's also significant. The industry is very significant. I mean, systemically significant. We don't have any central bank, Islamic bank policy rate. So at
Right.
least we can follow that one in order to help and support. But this criticism will never go away, because you cannot do really PLS financing using an Islamic financing model. So
Got it.
the dichotomy, on
Uh,
the liability side of the
yeah.
bank is PLS. On the asset side is sort of, Morava banking. You are trying to fix it conventional both ways. My argument was that if people are religious and if they have knowledge about Islamic finance, they
Yeah.
will be following the dictum. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, many people do Islamic banking or finance without knowing, except that riba is haram. But what is the end result? They are not really interested into this. So we have to educate the both customers, the depositors, as well as borrowers as well. So that's what my suggestion, and we can start with Malaysia because Malaysia has developed this industry very well.
Got it, sir. And one more question is about uh, that conventional banking has a long history. Uh, Today that we are looking at, and it has a very long background. But you know that as compared to the conventional banking history, Islamic banking is emerging very fast. New scholarly articles, debates are emerging. Now it's emerging very fast. So, what's your point of view in that sense?
Because it's easy to make money by doing Islamic banking. 80% of the industry is Islamic banking, because it's almost risk-free to do the Islamic bankers. Okay. Now, many countries, the conventional banks are converting because their source of funds is very cheap, because the religious, people, the religious sentiment, they put their money into the bank. So that is, I'm not really very enthusiastic about that is growing. So that is not an indication of our progress towards Islamic finance, but at least a starting point. We really need to promote non-banking financial institutions like venture
Yes.
capital, Modaraba, that really
Yeah.
brings the maqasid and asset link financing, but that is risky. So that means you have to really, if you follow the religion and dictum, the revised haram, profit loss sharing, that's what the norm is. What I
Yeah.
find out, many businessmen don't even know the meaning of it. They are otherwise practicing Muslim, but when it comes to fiqh muamalat, they are not willing to give up anything. I'm talking about Pakistan, like 30% probably unemployment is educated youth, and government cannot give them a job, or the private sector is very small. So in order to make them employable, entrepreneurship, I'm talking about SMEs. Now somebody has to come up with the money, right? So these rich people do not want to even share, a small portion of their money for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it turns out to be, successful. A generation of younger people get employed, they have a family, they have a future. Otherwise, this younger generation get wasted. They get into drug, terrorism, the other bad things that are not permitted by Islam. So you really look into this segment of the population of any country, not in Pakistan, in Bangladesh as well.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your comments. Now, let me ask from Mr. Muzzamil sir. Rehan Muzzamil ji, sir. Yes, sir.
I once again thank all the participants for their excellent input, and as discussed by everyone, this sector needs to be researched into and has a huge potential, not just for the Muslim world, but we should be leading the other non-Muslim sectors to identify the solutions to the global issues which we believe Islam presents and maybe the secular world is still looking for. So with that point, I would like to thank everyone, all the participants, all the speakers, and inshallah I am again sorry, we were very short of time, and the topic is so huge that it demands a lot more time. We will definitely try to organize specialized sessions on these topics, which needs much more time. Thank you. Dr. Ahmed is with us. If he can, please, we can spare a few moments. We are honored if Dr. Ahmed can. Please, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Please.
Thank you so much, sir.
If you can spare a few minutes. Yes.
In a few minutes, inshallah, I will complete my topic.
Thank you.
मैं चूँकि यहाँ पर हमारे बहुत सारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स उर्दू भी समझते हैं, तो इसलिए मैं कुछ स्लाइड्स मेरे पास हैं, अगरचे वो मैं इस वक्त शेयर नहीं कर पाया वक्त की किल्लत की बुनियाद पर, लेकिन वो टॉपिक है हलाल फूड एंड द क्लास रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ मुस्लिम्स, की तबकाती जिम्मेदारी। तो इससे रिलेटेड मैन्युफैक्चरर्स रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी भी है, फूड साइंसिबिलिटी से रिलेटेड भी कुछ चीज़ें हैं, और पॉलिसी रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज हैं, और इसी तरह शरिया स्कॉलर्स इससे रिलेटेड में थी प्रेजेंट करना चाह रहा था। लेकिन सबसे पहली बात तो ये एज ए मुस्लिम नाते अल्लाह और उसके रसूल है, जिंदगी के मुख्तलिफ तबकात में इस हवाले से हमारी क्या आप लोगों से आप एंड करने अब कि मैं अपनी जो उसको महवर बना कुछ बातें आप लोगों से शेयर कर लेता हूँ। नंबर 1 ये है कि अपने कारोबार में अल्लाह के अहकामात को तरजीह दें के बनाने से और बेचने से परहेज करें, और दूसरा मुख्तलिफ है माखज है उससे मुतल्लिक सही रहनुमाई भी जरूर ले लिया करें। और तीसरे नंबर पर ये कि हलाल करें। देखें, डू नॉट डिसाइड हलाल बाय बिकॉज पोजीशन ऑफ द आर कैन मेक द राइट डिसीजन। या कि इसकी मिसाल है, यानी फॉर द एग्जांपल, अगर आपको कोई बीमारी महसूस होने लगती है और आपको कोई बीमारी के सिस्टम्स और इससे मेडिकेशन से रिलेटेड कोई चीज़ महसूस करते हैं, तो आप डॉक्टर से रब्ता करते हैं और अपने तौर पर उसका इलाज नहीं करते।
तो इसी तरह जाहिर है कि हलाल की जो अथॉरिटी है वो मजहबी स्कॉलर्स को हासिल है। एज ए देखें एक चेंज में 2009 से एक हार के नाम से जो है वो एक इदारा है, मैं उसमें काम कर रहा हूँ, और हमारा पूरे मुल्क की सतह पर ये काम रहा है कि साइंटिस्ट और स्कॉलर्स इनको जमा करके हमने कहा साइंटिस्ट का काम ये है कि वो जो है वो नॉलेज प्रोवाइड करे स्कॉलर्स को, और स्कॉलर्स का काम है कि अब वो फतवा दें अल्लाह और उसके रसूल के फरामीन की रोशनी में, क्योंकि पूरा कुरान पूरी हदीस उनके सामने है, उस बुनियाद पर वो हलाल हराम का फैसला। तो अथॉरिटी ऑफ हलाल और हराम ये स्कॉलर्स हैं। अलबत्ता ये है कि उनको जो नॉलेज फराम करेंगे, क्योंकि वो उनकी फील्ड नहीं है, तो साइंटिफिक बेसिस पर जो नॉलेज होगी जाहिर है कि वो मजहबी वो साइंटिस्ट ही उनको प्रोवाइड करेंगे। तो
हमें बहुत जरूरी है कि साथ सब मिलके बैठ एक जगह प्लेटफॉर्म पे बैठ के ये सब काम करें, बहुत जरूरी
अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह हमने सर अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह इस पर हमने बहुत काम किया है। 2009 से अब तक हम अपना एक मसवदा बना चुके हैं जो पंजाब असेंबली से पास हो चुका है अल्लाह के फजल से, और हम जो है ना फेडरल गवर्नमेंट को भी वो प्रेजेंट कर चुके हैं, और हमने मुल्क के जितने भी अथेंटिक और मुस्तनद उलमाए किराम थे हमने उन तमाम से फतवे लिए और फतवा लेकर एक मसवदा तैयार किया। फिर उसको दोबारा हमने जो है ना वो फाइनल करके उसको अब इस वक्त हम कोर्स के तौर पर भी प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं, और अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह तो इस पाकिस्तान में शायद दुनिया में पहला इस तरह का मौका है कि हलाल को हलाल हराम को हराम कहने वाले वो उलमाए किराम हैं, और वो उसके बाकायदा एक मसवदा बन चुका है अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह।
माशाल्लाह।
और हम अपनी इस मेहनत को पूरी दुनिया में
जी इनवाइट करेंगे इंशाल्लाह एक सेपरेट सेशन के लिए मुकम्मल। आपका माजरत टाइम का कमी है, अगला सेशन स्टार्ट होना है। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आप लोगों का सबका।
थैंक यू सो मच, थैंक यू सो मच,
एंड we will definitely continue these sessions inshallah in the future. Jazakallah. Thank you
so much. Jazakumullah
again for all the participants. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Over to you, Mr.
I'm really thankful to every panelist and every member and the attendees to attend this fruitful session. Especially thankful to Dr. Jastri, Dr. Ahmed Kabeer Saab, Dr. Dr. Ashraf Dawood Saab, and everybody else who was joining this session.
Moha,
really take care of yourself.
Betania.
And it was a really very
wonderful. Suggest we have a picture. Is possible? Okay.
Yes, please.
Group photo. It's possible. I don't know.
Keeping distance. Thousands of kilometers distance. Thank you very much, sir. We will share all the details, all the recordings as well. Jazakallah.
Okay. We'll see you again. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Take care.